10 a.m. and I will call the meeting of the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability to order. I'm Bega Chairperson Norma Hutcheson. This meeting is being held at the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability at 1030 15th Street Northwest, Suite 700 West, and virtually. Joining me today for this meeting are board members Charles Nottingham, Felice Smith, and Melissa Tucker. Board Member Darrin Sobin is joining us virtually. Together, the five of us constitute a quorum. Since it was first posted, there have been no changes to the agenda. And I ask the board to please take a minute to review the agenda, and then we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll offer the motion that we adopt the agenda for the meeting today.
Okay, is there a second? It's great. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda for today's meeting. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none, the board has adopted the agenda for today's meeting. Also before us today are the January 2026 draft meeting minutes. And would a member please make a motion to consider approval of the January 2026 meeting minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board consider approval of the January 2026 meeting minutes. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, the board approves the January 2026 meeting minutes. Next, we'll hear a report from the Office of Open Government. Director Allen, please proceed.
Thank you and good morning, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I am Niquelle Allen, Director of Open Government, and I am pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Open Government, or OOG. Our mission is to ensure that all persons receive full and complete information concerning the affairs of the District of Columbia government and the actions of its officials. Since the last board meeting, OOG has continued its work to ensure that District of Columbia government's operations are transparent, open to the public, and promote civic engagement. To that end, OOG has enforced the Open Meetings Act, advised on the Freedom of Information Act requirements, and provided training on those transparency laws. OOG has proudly served as advocates for an open and transparent government. First is Open Meetings Act and Freedom of Information Act advice rendered by the office. Advisory opinions. I have not issued an advisory opinion since the last board meeting. Informal advice. Since the last board meeting, OOG has responded informally via email, telephone, teleconference to requests for assistance as follows: 29 requests for Open Meetings Act advice, 11 requests for FOIA advice, and 13 requests for technical assistance with our website, open-dc.gov. Meeting monitoring. OOG staff attends public bodies meetings in person and remotely to ensure compliance with the Open Meetings Act. They also inspect public bodies websites and the central meeting calendar for public meeting notices and records maintained by OOG. OOG staff attorneys provide legal advice on OMA compliance and take corrective action if necessary. Since the last board meeting, OOG's legal staff attended 7 public body meetings. As a result of the monitoring, 2 corrective measures were communicated. The public bodies failed to respectively: 1, publish a complete meeting notice, which should have included the location of the meeting, valid dial-in number with access code or valid web link and login information pursuant to the OMA and its regulations, and 2, publish the full recording of its open session meeting in accordance with the district's open meetings laws. Training and outreach is next. Bega Establishment and Comprehensive Ethics Reform Act public hearing on January 13th. The District of Columbia Council Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on Bill 26-0325, Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Authority Clarification Amendment Act of 2025. The bill was introduced by Chairman Mendelson on July 11th, referred to the Committee of the Whole on July 14th of 2025, and it is under council review. The legislative measure seeks to amend the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Establishment and Comprehensive Ethics Reform Act of 2011 to clarify the board's ability to require certain individuals to file public financial disclosures. I attended the hearing in person along with Senior Attorney Advisor Lynn Tran, Office of Government Ethics General Counsel Asia Stewart Mitchell, and OGE Legal Assistant Courtney Brown. Bega Chairperson Norma Hutcheson and Director of Government Ethics Ashley Cook provided testimony on behalf of the agency. District of Columbia Government's General Counsel Wellness Retreat on January 16th, 2026. Chief Counsel Neal attended DC Government's General Counsel Wellness Retreat at the District of Columbia Department of Human Resources, or DCHR. The retreat was facilitated by Christy Venable, founder and CEO of Smile Therapy Services, LLC in Washington, D.C. The theme of the retreat was Leading Without the Weight, Breaking Stress Myths, and Building a Healthier Leadership Mindset. And it focused on guiding general counsels and other managing attorneys on how to lead with strength, clarity, and sustainable well-being. Among the topics covered were the hidden burden of legal leadership in DC government, understanding stress, what science tells us, and building healthier leadership mindset in DC government. The retreat concluded with relaxation exercises, which included candle making and sound bath therapy. United States Department of Justice, DOJ Privacy Considerations Training on January 21st, 2026. Attorney Advisor Joan Lelma attended Privacy Considerations Training facilitated by Attorney Advisors Caitlin Krall, Kathleen Uhot, Michael Stanghan of the Office of Information Policy, Department of Justice. The virtual training covered the application of Exemptions 6 and 7C of the Federal Freedom of Information Act, when to provide GLOMAR responses to FOIA requests, and how to process Privacy Act requests. Open Meetings Act webinar for the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, DLCP, boards and staff on January 23rd, 2026. Attorney Advisor Anthony J. Skirbo facilitated an OMA webinar for DLCP's boards and the members and their staff. The session covered OOG's functions and an in-depth examination of the OMA's application to public bodies. American Society for Access Professionals, or ASAP, FOIA case update. On January 29th, I, along with Chief Counsel Neal, Attorney Advisors Lelma and Skirbo, and Trial Attorney Brandon Lewis, attended virtually the ASAP FOIA court case update. The training was facilitated by Attorney Advisor Michael Heath, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and Richard Huff, former co-director of the Office of Information and Privacy, U.S. Department of Justice. Among the topics discussed by examining recent FOIA cases were Exemptions 1, 4, 5, 6, 7A, 7C, 7D, and 7E, procedural issues such as expedited processing, record creation, and clawback. And next in my report is the litigation and legislative update. Litigation, Carlton Theodore Landis versus the Federal Bureau of Prisons, case number 21-0504 in DC District Court. This is a federal FOIA case in which the plaintiff, an inmate at a federal penitentiary, challenged the responses of the Bureau of Prisons and the Office of Personnel Management to his FOIA requests. The plaintiff sought, quote, all data fields concerning all employees of the Bureau of Prisons to include each employee's name, title series, grade, salary, and duty station for calendar years 2017 and 2018. OPM maintained responsive records in its Enterprise Human Resources Integration Database. The court found that Exemption 6 of FOIA allows OPM to withhold the names and duty stations of the BOP employees. Records maintained in the database qualify as personnel files within the scope of FOIA's Exemption 6. The Bureau of Prisons employees have a substantial privacy interest in their names and duty stations. The court stated that information reveals little or nothing about an agency's own conduct and does not further FOIA's statutory purpose. Further, the court found that the defendant had plausibly asserted that releasing the names and duty stations of the Bureau of Prisons employees would cause foreseeable harm by opening them to pressure from inmates to commit illegal acts under duress and subject them and their families to being searched on the internet or otherwise located by prisoners, former prisoners, or their families. The court granted the defendant's motion for summary judgment, and a copy of the court's decision is in Dropbox. Chicago Justice Project versus the District of Columbia, case number 2022 CA001175-B in DC Superior Court. I had previously reported on this case where the Chicago Justice Project filed suit to compel MPD to release certain records concerning the gang tracking and analysis system in a dispute regarding an advance fee that MPD demanded for its FOIA review and a similar amount that the Chicago Justice Project demanded in attorney's fees. An oral motions hearing was held on September 25th, 2025. The court heard the parties' argument and took the motion for in-camera review under advisement. On January 29, 2026, the court issued an order denying both the Chicago Justice Project's motion for in-camera review and the district's cross motion for enforcement of the settlement agreement. The district's opposition to plaintiff's motion was twofold. First, the district agreed that terms of the settlement agreement preclude the Chicago Justice Project from litigating the request for in-camera review, and that under the terms of agreement, they had waived its right to any further production. Second, it was the district contention on the merits that in the most recent production and Vaughn NDC satisfied the FOIA satisfied FOIA and the in-camera review by the court was not warranted. The court determined that the terms of the settlement agreement did not prevent CJP from litigating the request for in-camera review and that CJP had not waived its right for further production. Having found that CJP had not waived its right to litigate matters in dispute, the court turned to the substance of the parties' disagreement. The court found that the district had adequately justified its reliance on law enforcement exemption, and thus no in-camera review of documents was necessary. A remote status hearing has been scheduled for February 27th, 2026 to discuss how the case will proceed. A copy of the order has been added to Dropbox, and OOG staff will continue to monitor this case. Karras, Plavick, and Millen, LLP versus the District of Columbia, case number 2020 CA 003087B in DC Superior Court. I had previously reported on this case where TPM sued the district under DC FOIA, alleging that the district failed to produce online various budget-related documents related to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education and the District of Columbia Public Schools. DC Superior Court denied the mayor's motion to dismiss and granted TPM's motion for summary judgment. The court ordered the mayor to produce the requested documents and to comply with the publication requirements of DC Official Code Section 2-536, and the mayor appealed. On appeal, the DC Court of Appeals affirmed the Superior Court orders requiring the production and online publication of the requested budget documents for fiscal years 2019 to present. The court vacated and remanded the portion of the order requiring the publication of other documents under DC Official Code Section 2-536 and instructed the lower court to clarify the scope of the required publication. On November 12, 2025, TPM filed a motion for contempt and further injunctive relief asking the court to hold the district in contempt for the Superior Court's July 23, 2021 order requiring the district to produce to TPM and post online the documents requested in TPM's October 9, 2019 DC FOIA request. TPM contends that the mayor contends to withhold the documents despite the Superior Court's order compelling disclosure and the opinion of the DC Court of Appeals upholding that order and rejecting the mayor's legal defenses. TPM also asked the court to order further injunctive relief that requires the mayor to post online the required budget materials for DCPS and OSSI on an ongoing basis. On November 26, the district filed an opposition to TPM's motion. The district contends that it was working in good faith to identify and produce responsive documents when TPM chose to move for contempt. TPM filed a reply in support of its motion on December 3, 2025. TPM contends that the mayor's opposition confirms that she is in contempt of the court's FOIA response and order publication and online publication orders. On January 30th, 2026, TPM filed a notice of recent development related to its pending motion to call the court's attention to a memorandum to all deputy mayors and agency heads issued by the Chief of Staff of the Executive Office of the Mayor, which instructs them to refuse to produce to the District of Columbia Council any agency budget enhancement requests such as Form B submitted as part of the FY25 and FY26 budget formulation. TPM contends that the instruction contained in this memo is directly contrary to decisions of both the DC Superior Court and Court of Appeals, and that the issuance of the memo is further evidence that the mayor will not comply with the court's order or DC FOIA. A status hearing has been set for February 20th, 2026. Copies of the aforementioned motions and replies have been added to Dropbox, and OOG staff will continue to monitor. Legislative action with implications for the DC Freedom of Information Act. On February 2nd, 2026, Chairman Mendelson introduced PR 26-0521, Budget Enhancement Request Litigation Authorization of 2026. By this measure, the Council authorizes the Council's Office of General Counsel to initiate, defend, intervene, participate, or take any other action in a matter in any court or tribunal on behalf of and in the name of the Council of the District of Columbia to assert the interest of the Council in obtaining certain agency budget enhancement requests that must be furnished to the Council pursuant to DC Official Code Section 47-318.05A. In light of the appellate decision in TPM concerning the mayor's disclosure and publication requirements under DC FOIA, primarily with respect to agent budget request documents, the Council appears to be preempting any potential delays in receiving the mayor's budget package or required documents, particularly in light of the challenges experienced last year during the budget cycle and the ongoing litigation, which I just reported on. The Council retained the measure on February 3rd, 2026 by a vote of 8-5. The resolution, appellate decision, and related statute are in Dropbox. Last is administrative matters. Bega's performance oversight hearing. On January 28, 2026, Chairperson Hutcheson, Director Cooks, and I presented information and testified before the DC Council Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety, chaired by the Honorable Book Pinto, for the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability's annual performance oversight hearing. Due to the snow emergency, the hearing was conducted virtually. I highlighted OOG's FY25 and FY26 achievements within its existing programs and OOG's goal for FY26. I requested that the committee consider certain changes to the district's government transparency laws that would lead to establishments of new programs at OOG to advance government openness and transparency. We also answered questions from Chairwoman Pinto. A copy of my testimony regarding the Office of Open Government is in your Dropbox. This concludes the Office of Open Government's February 5th, 2026 report. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Director Allen. Are there any questions for Director Allen? No questions. Okay, the next item then is a report from the Director of the Office of Government Ethics, Ashley Cooks. Director Cooks, please proceed.
Good morning, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I'm Ashley Cooks, Director of the Office of Government Ethics. I'm pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Government Ethics, OGE. First is an update on the status of OGE investigations. The information reported today regarding OGE's cases will not reflect any status changes that may occur because of actions taken by the board during today's meeting. For open investigations by status, we have a total of 93 matters. Open undocketed matters, we have a grand total of 6. Pending state investigations by status, we have 33 matters that are closed pending collection. 3 matters stayed pending DC Superior Court case. 3 matters stayed for OIG investigation. 2 matters stayed for U.S. District Court case for a grand total of 41. For regulatory matters by status, we have 47 matters that are closed pending collection, 655 matters that are open for a grand total of 702. Again, we currently have 93 open investigations and 8 matters that are stayed. The number of open preliminary and formal investigations includes 9 new matters. The investigative team resolved 11 investigations since the board last met. This total does not reflect the number of complaints that were dismissed for a lack of jurisdiction. For training and outreach, for professional development trainings attended by staff, since the last board meeting, program support specialist Tiana Smith completed a PeopleSoft course titled Using Managing the DCP Card. Chief of Staff Christina Mitchell attended Americans with Disabilities Act training. For trainings conducted by staff, since the last board meeting, OGE conducted 9 training sessions: the January monthly ethics training, the January monthly Hatch Act training, 2 new employee orientation ethics segments, an ethics training for the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, and outside employment training for the Office of Human Rights, a Hatch Act training for DC Health Benefits Exchange, the Quarterly Boards and Commissions training, and an Ethics Counselor Financial Disclosure Statement training. In January, 20 users completed 47 courses using the LMS. 68 district employees completed ethics training using PeopleSoft, and 66 new employees attended new employee orientation and received information on the district's ethics rules in January. For advisory opinions and advice, for informal advice, OGE's legal staff provided advice for approximately 29 ethics inquiries, which is 1 less than the 30 reported at the January board meeting. This number does not include responses we have provided to questions regarding the lobbyist and FDS e-filing systems. For formal advisory opinions, OGE has not issued any formal advisory opinions since the board last met. Next is an update on legislation and rulemaking. First, council legislation affecting financial disclosure. Chairperson Hutcheson and I testified at a public hearing regarding B26-0325, Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Authority Clarification Amendment Act of 2025 on January 13, 2026. Bega received support from former Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner Robert Branham and Kedrick Payne, Vice President of the Campaign Legal Center. This legislation is in response to Bega's rulemaking, which designated 47 board and commissions as public financial disclosure statement filers. It will repeal Bega's authority to designate public officials and employees as financial disclosure statement filers. I will continue efforts to express the agency's position on this legislation. Financial disclosure rulemaking. On September 27, 2024, pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1161.047I, this board designated 47 board and commissions as public financial disclosure statement filers. Shortly after the rulemaking was finalized, OGE became aware that many of the boards had been replaced or merged with other designated boards. As a result, OGE drafted a notice of proposed rulemaking, which corrected the list of designated boards and commissions from 47 to 43 in 3 DCMR Section 5710. The notice was published in the Register on November 21st, 2025, and the 30-day comment period closed on December 21st, 2025, without any comments. The notice of final rulemaking was published in the DC Register on January 23rd, 2026, and became final upon publication. On December 2nd, 2025, the Council passed B26-0518 and B26-0519, District of Columbia Boards and Commissions Financial Reporting Emergency and Temporary Amendment Acts of 2025. Both pieces of legislation halt the applicability for 3 DCMR Section 5710 until April 3rd, 2026. OGE intends to send notice to all designated filers, including those boards and commissions listed in that section of the regulation, regarding their 2026 filing requirement, which will be due on May 15, 2026. Next is an update on OGE administrative matters. First is staffing. OGE is in the process of filling its vacancies for investigator and supervisory attorney advisor. Next is the 2025-2026 performance oversight. On January 28, 2026, I, along with Chairperson Hutcheson and Director Allen, gave testimony at our FY 25-26 performance oversight hearing before the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. I updated Councilmember Pinto on OGE's operations, including information on our training and advice efforts, investigation and enforcement, and our 2 administrative programs, financial disclosure and lobbying. I answered questions regarding pending legislation, Bill 26-0325, the potential passage of a comprehensive code of conduct, and OGE's efforts to educate employees on the outside employment restrictions. Next is an update on financial disclosure statement, FDS. Pursuant to DC Official Code Sections 1-1162.24 and 1-1162.25, public officials and certain government employees must file a financial disclosure statement as a means of transparency and to prevent engaging in conduct that violates the Financial Conflicts of Interest statute. Bega is responsible for ensuring that employees and public officials who meet the statutory requirement file their annual financial disclosure statement. We are excited to kick off FDS season 2026. The FDS team sent out the 2026 Agency Head Memo, which is OGE's initial request for information and instructions that launches the financial disclosure season. The Agency Head Memo informs directors, council members, and ethics counselors to send their agency's filers list to OGE on or before March 2nd, 2026. We are looking forward to another successful filing season. Next is an update on lobbyist registration and reporting, LRR. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.27a, a person who receives compensation or expends funds in an amount of $250 or more in any 3 consecutive calendar month period for lobbying shall register the Director of Government Ethics and pay the required registration fee. According to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.30, each registrant shall file a quarterly report concerning the registrant's lobbying activity during the previous quarter. Lobbyist Quarter 4 registration renewals and activity reports were due on January 15, 2026. An average of 97% of filings were submitted on time. The LRR team is in the process of completing enforcement for registrants who failed to timely file their activity reports for Quarter 3. And last is an update on public investigations. That is 24-0016F and 25-0002F in Retreon White. This is a formal investigation based on 1, the criminal indictment of Ward 8 council member for allegedly agreeing to receive and accepting bribes, And 2, allegations that he violated the code of conduct by failing to file a full and complete public financial disclosure statement. The board scheduled a hearing in 25-0002F to take place today on February 5th. Thank you. This concludes the Office of Government Ethics, February 5th, 2026 report. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Cooks. Are there any questions?
I have one question, Madam Chair. Director Cooks, thank you for your presentation. When you mentioned earlier on, you referenced 702 matters that are being tracked or otherwise in the system. That's a big number, maybe for those who might be following it, who might have questions. Could you maybe amplify that a little bit, put that in context? How do we get to 702?
Sure. So those are our regulatory matters by status. It includes 47 matters that are closed pending collection and 655 matters that are open. Our regulatory matters include matters that are that regard our lobbyists, folks who have failed to timely file registration reports or failed to timely file activity reports, as well as our financial disclosure statement filers, those who have failed to timely file. Those closed pending collection matters are those that we have already made a decision in, and they're just pending either collection from the Office of Pay and Retirement Services or the Central Collection Unit. Those matters that are open, there's something that is still pending there, whether it's us sending it to OPRS or having that employee to file. So our regulatory, those are our regulatory matters. And I will note that the number has decreased. We started the year with about almost 900. So we're working to decrease that number. So we have decreased it by almost 200.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then thank you, Director Cooks. The next item on the agenda are public comments. Members of the public in attendance at this meeting have an opportunity to make a comment at this time. If there are any members of the public present, looks like everyone belongs to us. If there are no comments from the public, we will proceed with the next item on the agenda, and that's our executive or closed session. This is a closed session to discuss ongoing confidential investigations pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B14, to consult with an attorney to obtain legal advice and to preserve the attorney-client privilege between an attorney and a public body pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B4A, to discuss personnel matters including the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation of government appointees, employees, or officials pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B10, to deliberate on a decision in which the Ethics Board will exercise quasi-judicial functions pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B13, and to discuss contract negotiation strategies pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B2. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board enter into executive session. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Hearing no nays, it is now 10:33 and we are in executive session. Board members, please move over to the boardroom for the session, and we will return to this meeting after the conclusion of the executive session to report out on any matters decided, finish any other business, and adjourn the meeting. Okay, the time is now 11:39 and we are back on the record. During our closed session, the board approved a negotiated disposition in matter 25-0075-P in Ray C. Franklin. The board also approved a notice of final rulemaking for the Office of Open Government. And the time is still 11:39, and this concludes the meeting of the DC Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. The next monthly board meeting will be held at this building, the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, 1030 15th Street Northwest, Suite 700 West, and virtually on March 5th, 2026 at 10 a.m. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.